Hey, how's it going? My name is Nate, and tonight I'm bringing you the first episode of a new series I'm going to be working on called Market Guide. The idea behind it is to go through the market once a week and basically check out what the market's doing, build a guide or a template that we can use to trade off of, looking at potential areas to watch for, what stocks I'm looking at, and potential problem spots, potential breakout points, all that good stuff. So the first thing that I would really like to dive into before getting into the actual charts is just kind of talking about where the market is right now. What's kind of interesting is we're basically through a big portion of all the earnings reports. I think like 88% of all of the companies in the S&P 500 have already reported. And what we see right now is that we're just kind of moving sideways. So that's kind of interesting. It kind of gives me maybe some clues as to what we're looking for. And also another thing to point out is that CPI was last week, and we just stuck in this range right here. I was expecting expecting more of a move off of CPI, but maybe that can be another telling sign. We'll hopefully be able to dig into that a little bit later. We do have some interesting stuff coming out this week on Tuesday. We have retail sales as well as jobless claims on Thursday, and then Powell speaks on Friday. So should be some good stuff to check out this week that could potentially move the markets. So first off, let's dive right into the charts, and we are going to start off with the SPY. So like I said earlier, SPY is kind of stuck in this range. In fact, if you look at this Friday, last Friday, the 5th, we basically traded inside of that range the entire time. So now I said on the Caveman Discord that I was particularly watching the 411 area because that's where we have a really nice volume shelf. So if we break below that, that's potentially where bears could start to step in. Now, if we look, every time that we've gotten below 411, it's quickly shot back up. If you look at the hourly charts, maybe not quite quickly, but before the end of the day, it's shot right back up. So that shows me that buyers are still stepping in to push prices higher, but they're not willing to try to push too much higher above this level. So I think that these two levels are going to be the main thing to watch for, along with 411. A break below 411, especially a daily close below 411, that's going to really increase my bear thesis, or the way I'm going to lean to the bear side is a close before underneath 411, and then moving down further, I'd be looking for potentially a gap fill down here, and maybe even moving lower, potentially not this coming week, but the following week. But a lot rest on 411 for me. Now, if we can continue to build up above here, above 411, and then continue to maybe break out of this 413 and get a daily close above there, I really like trying to hit this 415 level next week or coming into this week. And then, of course, you can potentially push up here to the 421.22 to get that gap fill up there. The trend for me is still up, right? So, I mean, if we look at, zoom out, the trend is still going up. We're just kind of consolidating right here. I'm not too concerned about it, but it is kind of boring to just watch this back and forth. I wouldn't necessarily buy down here as calls, and I wouldn't sell up here as puts. I'm going to be watching volume, and we'll just see what the day gives us. On the weekly side of things, we do have kind of an interesting area right here. So this here is going to be a demand zone or a supply zone, depending on which way you're looking at it. Here we can see every time we've come to this level, it's pushed down, pushed down, pushed down. So that means it's a supply zone. Now that we are above it, so we broke above and we're coming down to it, this area, which is in between about 408 to 411, is acting as a demand zone. And if we come back to our daily chart here, we can see once the price gets up under 411 down to about that same range, 408, excuse me, it pushes price back up. So we're seeing that this area is acting as a demand zone. So we'll see what happens the rest of the week. Moving along, we'll go right into the Qs. We'll step back on the daily first, and we're basically in a rising wedge. So now typically rising wedges do break down, statistically speaking, but we'll see what ends up happening. So the first thing that I would like to point out is a daily close under this level right here, 321.32. That to me is going to be a big, especially if that comes tomorrow. As we can see, we're basically right on that level is where this would intersect on the daily. If we get a close there tomorrow, I'm definitely going to be looking on the bearish side and potentially coming down here to this little tiny gap fill. It fills at 314.94. So we'll see if that comes down. We have a pretty nice volume shelf up over here, so that can offer some support. But that's basically what I'm going to be looking at for the Qs. On the upside, if we start to break above this level, so let's say roughly 327 and some change, then I'd be looking at potentially coming up here to this supply zone. Or SR flip, whatever you want to call it. So potentially coming up to about this level is what I would be looking for and that's kind of just the August highs. So this area is where I'd be looking to get up to, potentially at the peak of it about 334.42 is about the area I'd be looking for. So that's what I'm looking for on the Qs. IWM, basically a pretty boring chart in my opinion. The fact that this, if we compare SPY versus Qs versus IWM, you can quickly see that the small caps have not really been able to get much oomph behind them. And that to me is pretty concerning for the entire market. Now, I lean a little bit on the bullish side of the entire market, but the fact that the IWM just really hasn't been able to catch much of a bid is a little concerning to me. So until this starts breaking out of this wedge here, I'm going to be a little bit concerned and potentially looking for downside. Now, the way that I would personally play this is we have a little bit of a gap fill that did not get filled on Friday, which is kind of annoying to me. And currently price is sitting below this volume shelf here. If we go from this high to here, we're sitting just below it, right? So until price can get above there and ideally get above this, what I call these a supply and demand zone lines, right? Trend line. Or you can do like SR lines, whatever you want to call it. So until price can get above this area, so like tomorrow, for instance, it would be about 175 around that range. Until price can break out of this triangle, I'm not going to be too bullish on him. Once I see this break and get a close above it, then I'm going to be looking at potentially coming up here for about 179.26 and then potentially getting the gap fill all the way up here to 181.28. Those are basically the things I'm watching. Now on the downside, I'd be looking for a daily close below this level here, which is 172.16. That to me is going to be the mark. If you close below that level, a daily candle close below that level is pretty much going to be fueling the fire for me to go down here to somewhere in the 168.29 to 169 levels, somewhere in this zone. Just to show you a little bit further back out on the chart, what I'm seeing on that. Every time that we come down here, push up. Here we kind of flirted around with it, but here we went down, came up, went down, came up. You can just kind of see how this area gets respected for the most part. So I would be looking for basically a break below this level to push down or break above this level. Anything in between, I mean, I guess you maybe play some intraday moves, but I wouldn't be looking at too many swings or anything too long term. So that's my IWM. Let's look into Apple. So I guess we'll start on the weekly chart on Apple. Not a lot happening. Apple didn't really do much, unfortunately. After we had this really nice move from earnings, we just kind of traded sideways and throwing this doji. So that's not really great on the weekly. I definitely don't like that. But one thing I'll point out is we have, again, this trend line that acts as a support and resistance lines or demand zone and supply zone, whatever you want to call it. Anytime we came up here, we push down, push down, push down. Now we're above that level. So what would my theory is that if we come down to this level, we're going to push off of it, right? So that takes us to the daily. And here we can see the same thing. We have a little bit of a trend line, and now we're above this trend line. So I'm looking, and you can see how price actually comes and bounces off these levels and pushes back up, right? And you can see that, this is kind of a wiki action what we had the past couple days. So for me, what I'm looking for is this level 174 has been a very, very strong level for resistance. So I'm looking for a break above that level to hopefully get back up to these recent highs from all-time high back up over here, and you have this one here at 179.61, and then this one over here, our most recent high, which was 176.15. So I'd be looking at those levels for my targets on the upside, but only if you can break above 174. I think you're going to continue to trade sideways until you can either break one of these two levels. Now on the downside, 171.60 is the level that I'm looking for a potential break, which perfectly lines up with this right here. So if tomorrow, Monday, we come down to a 171.65 or so and break below this trend line, that's going to move me down to this gap fill area right down here, which perfectly lines up with our weekly lines that we have here to potentially get a bounce right into that gap zone. So that's going to be what I'm looking for in this next week, to see if we can kind of get a bounce into this level, or at least come down to this level, and then probably, trade sideways, do a little bit of consolidation here. Who knows? We'll see what happens. Potentially just bounce right back up. But those are kind of the two scenarios that I'm looking for, either a break of 174 or a breakdown of 171.60 to this gap zone. We'll move on to, let's go to Amazon. So, let's just delete these little circles here. Clean up my chart real quick. There we go. Okay. So if we look at the weekly candle for Amazon, I mean, this is a pretty strong, after earnings, nice hammer and then a really good push. So this is looking good, and I'm still pretty bullish, I would say, overall on Amazon. Here we have a decent trend line that was finally broken, and we've been pushing for the last month. So again, it still looks pretty good. Same type of thing. We have this area of interest where we come down, we bounce up, we come down, bounce up. Now, what I'm looking at is I think that there may be a little bit of cooling off this week on Amazon. So what I would ideally like to have is potentially, coming down here to this level and kind of filling in this gap and bouncing perfectly off of this trend line. I could see a narrative where that would play out. You have a little bit of a volume shelf that starts below that, so I wouldn't expect too much of a push below. So here would be a nice place to enter in calls for a push back up. Or you could start, a same thing where you could start to trend sideways. But if this trend line continues the way it has, I would expect a bounce up. So this could be a good early week potential move down area, and then later in the week move back up. Or maybe this might take a week or two to really develop. We'll have to see. But those are kind of the things that I'm paying attention to. Now on the upside, right here, let me show you this level. So this little supply zone or now demand zone has been something that's interested me. Is we've come up here and pushed down, we've come up and pushed down. So what I'm looking for is maybe we could actually trade sideways. Instead of coming down here to this gap fill, we may trade sideways. And what would be interesting to me is if we can break this high up here, 113.28. What I'd be looking for is then a gap fill up here to, let's see, that is, I guess I have it right here, 114.76. So that's going to be this gap fill right here. That's what I'm looking for. So, potentially either a break of this high just to get a nice little gap fill, or potentially a move back down. We'll just have to see what the market gives us. But that's basically the way that I'm looking at Amazon. We'll come down here. Let's go to NVDA next. So the first thing I would like to point out, I guess on the daily, so I guess for a bull thesis is we have a little bit of a bear flag, or excuse me, a bull flag that's starting to form. So, if we start to break above that, I would continue to be a little bit bullish, but on the daily, we're forming a wedge, right? So again, these typically break down. And if we come back to the Qs, it's the same thing that we see on the Qs. So, of course, NVIDIA is going to follow pretty close suit to that. But this could break down as well. Now, we did happen to bounce right off of this trend line. So, we're looking to see if that can continue and push up. But this former demand zone and now supply zone, I'm sorry, I said that backward. Former supply zone and now demand zone. I'm looking to see if that can help support us. So here we came down, pushed up, and then we flirted with it, and then came down, kind of came up to flirt with that area, came down on this one, came up, came down, flirted a little bit, and now we're looking to see if we can use the same area. Basically what I have here is a area from 271.19 to 280.38. That's my levels that I have for this now demand zone. So I'm looking to see if we can get some support off of that. But being that this is in a wedge, I wouldn't be surprised to see it come down a little bit here. If we look, we have a pretty good volume shelf that's sitting just below this, and this even is in a pretty good volume shelf. So I would be looking that, we probably won't move much below this level. which also would line up with this low right here. So we could see a retest of there. Now, if we do happen to break above, first mark I'm going to personally be watching for is this 289.46. That's the level that I think if we can kind of break above there, we could start to see this thing start to move and go higher. Now, the first psychological level to pay attention to is going to be this 300 level. That's going to be the first level I'm going to watch. And then a break above that, we have, these other highs that I'm just going to reference from our weeklies. So we have this one up here. We have a 313.30, and then we have a 346.47. Not that we're going to hit this level this week, but those are just the areas of interest that I'm looking at going forward. So the way that I would play this is first I'm going to be looking at a break of this flag right here. If we start to get a close below the flag at about... There we go. About anywhere from about 180 down to about 178.50. If we get a break below that, I'd be looking to test these lows this week. And I feel like that's probably one of the more likely scenarios that we're going to see. However, if we get a break above the flag, and I would say for tomorrow, put it at about 187.66. If you get a daily close above that level, you're going to be breaking out of this flag, and I would imagine probably a decent sized push up, and these would be the target areas that I'd be looking for. Next up is going to be MU. Now, this is stock that I'm actually swinging right now, and it's been very frustrating for me. It's typically a lagging stock for AMD and NVDA. So we're basically playing off of them doing good. Now, we've had this trend line and this, well, I guess a support resistant trend line, and we've been bouncing off of it very nicely, except for here, we actually came down, and I ended up buying on this day, had a nice push up, and then on this day came down, pushed up actually we came up and then pushed down and settled back in. What's nice is that we actually settled right on the trend line, so maybe it is still being respected. But the other thing that's interesting to me is we are sitting actually on the close right on this volume shelf. Or VPOC or whatever you want to call it. So we're right on that level. So that to me shows me that buyers are still stepping in and pushing this up. Now, on a bear side of things, if we get a close beneath a daily close beneath this level, 59.90, that would basically ruin the bear thesis in my opinion. And I would be looking to, potentially go short, maybe down to here, 58 or maybe even lower. So we'll see what happens there. On the bull side, I would like to just see a push up to this level here. And this is the basically a supply zone that we've been seeing respected multiple times here. So we get up and push down, get up, push down, get up, push down, get up to these levels, push down. You can see just how many times this has happened. So I'd be looking for the exact same, and that's really what I'm targeting for this trade, is just to get up to that level. If we do break above that level, I would say the next one I'd be paying attention to is roughly about up here at about 58.40. That's going to be the high from back in August, so that's what I'd be looking for with that. Moving on, we'll go to Google. Now, Google has been an absolute beast. So we had this massive weekly candle and just an awesome close for Google. We had a nice little bit of consolidation here, and then just this boom candle. So this week we may see some consolidation again, or we may see a continuation. We'll talk about that here. First thing I'd like to point out is just this trend line. So we've come up and just pushed down. You see multiple times how we just respected this level. Now that we've come and down, we are above the trading above this level. This is going to act as a support area. So if we start to come down, that's what I'd be expecting. Now, I don't expect Google to come down to this level, which would be in between about 99 to 101, but you never know what could happen. So we'll zoom out a little bit here and look at where we're at with Google. So first off, I had this area, and same type of thing. You come up, push down, push down, push down. Now we could be using this as a support area or demand area. But the first thing I'm going to be looking at is this actual gap fill. With this strong of a weekly candle, I would not be surprised to see a little bit of a cooling off and, like I said, maybe consolidation. So getting down here to this gap fill seems like a real possibility this week, but you never know what could happen. It's something that we're going to be watching for. on the upside, we have this same little demand zone. You can see we get up to these levels and it comes back down. And so we're flirting right on that level. So, you may see just some consolidation in here. So with Google, I don't know. I don't know what to think. My bearish thesis, or I guess I'd lean a little bit on the bearish side, not big time, but just a move back down to consolidate, maybe fill in this gap is what I'd be looking for. Getting above this level, though, the 119.36 would be pretty huge for me. If you start to get above that level, definitely be looking at this August high, I believe. Yeah, August of 123.26. And then you have another little, SR flip zone, demand zone to watch for up here, which goes up to 125.80. Down to 122.64. So those are the areas I'd be looking at. This one I'm just going to kind of wait to see what happens. I don't know if I can truly pick a direction just because I feel like it could get some consolidation. Next we have Meta here. Now Meta is another one that's been moving really good except for this last week. This last week was not great. So that was not a really good candle. Even these last two candles, the weekly prints have not been great. So interested to see what ends up happening with this guy. Now, one thing I just like to point out is we have a pretty good volume right here. In fact, the VPOC is actually, the volume point of control is above this level. So this could actually act as a pretty significant level of resistance, I think. So I don't know. If we start to break this level, then I would be targeting probably this area up here, this demand zone or supply zone up here. Let's see, what is it? 244.92 to about 243.18. And then we still, of course, had this massive gap fill above. Now, one thing I wanted to point out is we kind of have a similar pattern setting up. So last earnings, we had this massive gap fill, and then we kind of came down, formed a little bit of a wedge, and then just boomed off of it. Kind of see the same thing happening here, a little bit of a wedge forming, but now we're consolidating sideways. So for me, the way that I'm looking at Meta, I guess right now I remain bullish as long as we stay above about this level here, about 232.30. If we get a weekly candle, or excuse me, a daily candle close below this level, then I'm going to probably say I'm going to be looking on the bear side down to about 222.04, which is going to be this high right here, or even potentially get the full gap fill. I don't think that'll happen, but it could. You definitely have a volume shelf here and a lack of volume in this area, so that's really could see that happen. But I feel like the better side to be is long right now, but again, play what the chart gives you, right? If you see that starting to break this level, my feeling is that you're going to start to come down pretty quickly to these different levels. So that's what I'm looking for in Meta. And let's see, last up is going to be Netflix. So let's go to the weekly. Not a whole lot. I mean, we had this really nice, strong candle on Netflix, even though it came down a little bit. This is still a very nice looking candle. And it actually, if you look, it actually bounced right off of this. I'm back up here. So it bounced right off of this area right here. So we have a really nice volume building, and it just shot up right off of that. So that's really nice. We like to see that. And if we look at this here, same thing. So we have this trend line, the support resistant lines have basically flipped now. So we were resisting it, resisting, and now we're coming above it. Now, so what I think could happen is we could come down to this level and actually test this level. And if we did, it would be about 229.81 would be the low of that. Now, if we start to break up below that level, that's where it could maybe get a little bit interesting. Maybe down to this area here where we have a decent amount of volume built up, or you could start attacking these lows. But my feeling is we wouldn't break below this level, too far below this level. Instead, what I'd be looking for is actually getting a gap fill, which is up to 350.71. So I'd be looking for long entries. Now, if it does start to come down, you're seeing market doesn't look too good, I'd be looking for a bounce spot here to enter calls and then move back up to get into this gap fill. So we'll just kind of see what the market gives us, but that's basically what I'm seeing in is what I'm seeing in Netflix. So still very strong, still like, overall where things are going with that. And so the next thing I would like to talk about real quick is just the caveman alerts. So this is a Discord that we have. Really, really cool resources. A lot of tools in here. Definitely come and check this out. We have the pivot point calculators. Lots of good research stuff. Personally, what I like to do is I like to come in and look at different stocks. Maybe. There we go. All right. So here we'll just type in Apple. All right, so we're going to go up here to Apple, and you can come down here and look at short volume, and you can really see some nice, interesting stuff. We actually have a really nice charting software that's built into this. Looks beautiful. But tons of resources in the actual cavemanalerts.com. So check that out. But really, one of the things that I love about it is coming down here to the watch list. We have a bunch of different traders, including myself, that post in here every day looking at the different trades that we're taking. We have a very active trading lounge of where just people talk about different trades, what they're seeing, what they're looking at. We have a futures, a whole section on futures. A lot of really good traders in here. So, check this out. If you're interested in signing up, I think it's about $25 per month. So, it's pretty good. In my opinion, it's a really good value. I have certainly made, after joining this Discord, not to get you all pumped up on this Discord and because I'm in it, but there's a lot of really good calls, and it's helped level up my game significantly. So if you guys want to check that out, go to cavemanalerts.com, or I will have a link down below if you're interested in signing up for that. Other than that, hopefully you guys learned something interesting in this video. Maybe get some information for this next week that can help give you some trade ideas. I'll be posting in the Caveman Discord throughout the week with what I'm doing as I can. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in. Peace out.